by the cedar fire.
But certainly understand your concern about the the one way in and the one way out, and then the road closures as you left from up there. That certainly must have been very frightening.
Oh yes, it was very frightening.
All right. Well, thank you, Anna Rupert, calling in. Appreciate you getting through to us right now. Again, we're looking at about 8 to 10,000 people have availed themselves of the Qualcomm
back there. They've been back there since 2:30. That's on the north side of Villa de Santa Fe.
Earlier, who was on a piece of property owned by a gentleman who was kind enough to let us shoot the pictures this morning to give you a look at what was happening there. It seems like, you know, from this side of the mountain, you can't see any fire or hot spots that are burning.
Yeah.
And now it looks like, well, now you see some of the flames. I'm sorry, but I'm having a difficult time figuring out which way we're looking.
I don't know exactly what that is
If
either.
we're
I wonder
looking
if
east?
Yeah, it's hard to tell. We're looking from one of our downtown cameras, is that right? Or one of our stationary building-mounted cameras?
That's from Sky 10.
That's from Sky 10.
Can they tell us which way we're looking? Are we looking southeast?
East of Mount Miguel, but what direction are we looking? I think that's the question. That's east of Mount Miguel, but okay, we're still trying to get...
I'm trying to determine if those homes are at the base of our screen, if that's the Bonita area, or if that's Chula Vista.
I think it is. I think that, yeah, that's exactly what you're talking. Look at the size of the roads, the width of the residential roads there. It certainly appears to be that.
It looks like those new...
Home behind us. When we ran to see what it was, we saw dry brush, a lot of vegetation in the backyard of this address. It's 16843 Villa Santa Fe, and that was just burning. And just around that time, we also got a couple wind gusts, which was very different because all morning it seems as if the wind was going to cooperate with us. But just around that time, those embers blew everywhere due to the wind, and firefighters immediately diverted their attention from structure protection. They were protecting a lot of structures throughout the night because they originally were called here because several homes were on fire. Since then, only one home has spread onto fire. Since then, only one home has spread. The fire has only spread to one home since then. But at this point, they say it hasn't spread to any immediate structures down there where they just diverted their attention. And they're basically on spot fire control right now, trying to put out these little scattered fires created by the embers before they turn into something larger. And if you could see video of a palm tree of one of those fires, that was right at the driveway, the entrance of this home that we were looking at. And if that had created and that sparked up, that would have been a big trouble because there was only one entrance in and one entrance out, and at the time that palm tree, if it had ignited and gotten large, firefighters would have been trapped in there, and we were actually the ones who saw it ignite. We ran and got firefighters' attention right away. They came out and put the kibosh on that, and that was very important, and that was the closest I've ever come to the action because I actually helped the firefighters grab the hose and just ran and put that thing out right away.
Throughout the morning, Doug, we've been asking you about those wind conditions. When we first went on the air at 4 a.m., things were pretty calm and pleasant out there, as pleasant as they can be, pardon that word. Yeah. But as the mornings progressed, as we saw the sun rise, the wind started kicking up there. What's the situation like right there?
Michelle, it's been on and off all
fire for a variety of different ways. Sometimes it takes fire to crack the seed cases. Sometimes it's the smoke from the fire that causes seeds to germinate. They don't germinate in the regular way. But the point very simply is, if we're living in a vegetation province that must burn, now we have exploding human population. We're pushing the wildland-urban interface farther and farther to the east, and we're not doing it in a nice defensible even line. We push out little prongs this way, that way, up little mesas, up canyons, isolated little communities here and there, which make it virtually impossible for firefighters to cover that extraordinarily long interface between that vegetation that must burn and our built structures.
Well, then there's always the discussion, too, of if this stuff must burn, but we don't allow it to burn over a period of time, that creates an additional danger.
Well, indeed it does. And I go to the work of Richard Minich, a professor at University of California at Riverside, and he showed Baja California chaparral vegetation burn patterns versus California burn patterns. And in Baja California, where they don't have as much fire suppression, many, many more fires, but small areas. Here, we have the ability to put out fires. So if it's in a winter fire, we put it out right away. But what we do then is we allow that vegetation to grow older, to cover more and more areas, and then when we get the conditions of Santa Ana winds in a time of drought, we get these fires that basically are impossible for us to stop. What are we seeing right now? We're hearing, I mean, all of our officials are performing. I couldn't find anybody to criticize, no matter if I even tried. Right. So the point very simply is, after 2 days into this, what do we see? 0% containment. If we're doing everything we can, and that's not enough, then we kind of need to rethink our whole approach to how we live in this environment.
And of course, you said even when you walked in and sat down, this is probably, we'll be talking about that in the future, and we're talking about a lot of things in the future, but we don't seem to be learning the lessons. I mean, we're kind of in the same situation as we were during the Cedar Fire, that huge fire back in 1970. Is it inevitable that we're just going to have to learn to deal with these things in Southern California?
Indeed. The vegetation's programmed to burn. The Santa Ana winds will continue to come. And, you know, we might look to earthquakes for an analogy. You know, after every big earthquake, we do something. 1933 Long Beach, we eliminated the unreinforced masonry and we changed school building laws. 1971 San Fernando earthquake, we changed laws about how hospitals are built. 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake, we changed things about seismic mapping. 1994 Northridge, we learned how a lot of buildings failed. The point is, after every earthquake, there's legislation that fixes where some of the major problems were. And yet, when we compare what we learn after fires from the 1920s, there was an interesting study done after the 1923, 84 years ago, fire that took out Oakland and Berkeley Hills, kind of like did in 1991. And the recommendations for needs then were exactly the same recommendations that were made 80 years later at the panel looking after the Cedar Fire. 80 years with basically not much progress. And I think we could definitely profit from re-examining the situation.
And certainly when this fire is over, we're going to talk about that again in great detail. But as you say, for right now, firefighters are just doing a phenomenal job. Folks seem to be getting the word a little bit more, too, about the defensible space around their homes.
Indeed they are, and the defensible space, we're getting far more education, far more learning. But I thought a lot of the imagery yesterday dramatically showed that even a lot of homes that were well prepared, if one house on a block goes up, you see the fire stays there far longer. The natural fire front moving goes through much more rapidly than a fire once a house catches on fire. It burns longer, it burns hotter, and then lots of debris going off from one burning house starts picking off other houses in the neighborhood, and we saw that yesterday. It's not like the whole neighborhood's afire. This house is burning. Uh-oh, now we moved over to that house, and you see it hopscotching around.
Right, leapfrogging around the neighborhood. Yeah. You and I were talking here about the response of San Diegans, and I can't say enough good things about how San Diegans respond in a disaster. And you've seen this for a long time here, and you've watched it around the country and around the rest of the world as well.
It is. If there's anything good or heartwarming out of this, it is the response. You see, what are they saying in some of the evacuation centers? There's as many citizen volunteers there to help as there are people needing help.
They have to turn volunteers away in San Diego sometimes.
I think that's a tremendous testimony to the kind of people living in this area and our attitude. And you see the governor here, you see the mayor, the fire chief, you see everybody on top of things, everybody doing anything they possibly can. And it is nice to be part of a community that comes together and responds and reacts against this overwhelming